Thank you very much, Martin, for the kind introduction, and happy to introduce Pick8ship to you today. That was, we heard from people, can we have something that is really cost efficient, that is fast, but that is also flexible, right? And we'll touch on that during the presentation. Now, automation, why it is important, it's clear because we have a lot of labor in warehouses, and it's not only costly, but it's also hard to get, right? And that's why we look at it. But even if we have automation, we still have a lot of people, we still have inefficiency in the warehouse. And so actually it is also for those who already have automation, a really important and interesting topic. Now, if we talk about automation, there's an interesting thing. Of course, it helps us that we don't need to walk in the warehouse. So these 12, 15 kilometers we don't have, and we get faster. But there's actually a caveat to it, because there's always an either-or decision. You don't get everything. So what all started with already in the 60s was the stacker cranes, right? And the shuttles. And they were meant basically to give you speed. Not to walk in the warehouse, but also to have speed. But speed obviously comes at a cost, because you need many robots or many shuttles to bring all these boxes to your pick station. And you also need conveyors and all other systems you need around. And you don't have a lot of density, right? So yes, you get some speed, but the overall system loses it also. And you lose flexibility and density. Now, then came the systems that looked for density, cube-based system. Cool idea, right? Leave away the aisle, save that space, and stack everything. So a very interesting solution that was already developed mid-90s, right? For spare parts initially, as I have learned. But it comes also at a cost. You don't have the full speed because you need to restack what you put on top of each other, right? So for some products it's fast, but for others you need time to prepare. And you lose also some flexibility, right? Because you have limitations that the system gives you or time that it needs to bring a product to you. So cool system, but comes at a price. The last one is actually I wanted to mention is the AGV-based systems, or the Amazon system, which was developed by Kiva in 2003. The idea there was to have something that's really flexible. So no fixed installations, and you actually drive a shelf through the warehouse to the pick station to pick the products. And that was an exciting idea. 2003, really new. Those AGVs didn't exist like we know them today. But also that system comes at a cost because you don't have the high speed. Because basically if you think of a grocery order, 50 items, you have to move 50 shelves through the warehouse. And if you look at an Amazon warehouse, they have thousands of these robots. So you need a lot of space just to drive all those robots alongside each other. So yes, here you have full flexibility, great, but you compromise on speed and you compromise on density. And that, when we developed Pick8ship, those were all the questions we're thinking about. How to really change something, basically. Because if you look at the warehouse with the chaos that you have with boxes or cardboard boxes that stand around, if you try to automate that, you can do that. You need a lot of technology, but you won't be fast. It's an automated process, but the overall efficiency is not what you're looking for. And so we were looking, how could that be done? And we found that there's a couple of things we could maybe change that really solves those problems, right? Or help to solve them. And the first one was that we said those fixed shelves or this fixed racking in the warehouse, right, actually never fits. And if you look at the warehouse, usually it's kind of an air house. So you have just a lot of air in there. So that's not great. So we said, okay, and for automation, as I said, those racks are also not great. So we said, let's do a container. And I knew that from the restaurant equipment industry, because since the 60s, we have these systems to organize large kitchens and restaurants, right? To store different sized goods in containers or trolleys, as they call it. So we did a container that is actually flexible for storage because you have only load carriers that have support rails, and you can put them in all 4 centimeters. So if you have a small product or only a layer of a product, or if you have something high, it doesn't matter, you can use the same load carrier. And the robot will make sure that everything is always stacked as closely together as possible. The second thing that we introduced was a handling robot, but now compared to Kiva, not driving one shelf for one pick, but actually collecting the products that we need. So we drive with a container through the warehouse, collecting the products. And last but not least, we need a quite powerful software to manage the system and to run the system efficiently. Now let's have a look quickly in those 3 components. So I mentioned first, we don't have fixed shelves. So it's these containers, and you can flexibly use that space. And you don't need to program that, because basically you define that when loading the system. You decide if you want to put multiple products or not. You can also obviously mix things. The second thing is that we don't have fixed bins, as I mentioned. So if you basically have free space, you can put something else in and use that space. That brings us a density compared to a manual warehouse, an increase ×2 to ×4. And that actually not only means that you save space, but that you can stay much longer in your current warehouse, and you can do 2 to 3 times more revenue in the existing space. So that's really interesting to be able to do that. And as I mentioned, the system is made to be used end to end. So in the warehouse, we have customers already looking at, loading goods at the producers or at the wholesalers already in the containers. So we have 0 handling receive, right? So we're trying to get rid of all handling steps possible, trying to get rid of the packaging early on. So that's an extension in a way of the system to receive. The other is going from picking to delivery, right? That could be sorting, or that could be putting such a container with picked orders into a delivery van or on a cargo bike. So the system's end to end. We start in the warehouse, current focus, but we extend. And the reason is that obviously the costs accumulate through all these processes. And if you really want to have big savings, you also need to address a larger part of your cost base. Now the handling robot, we already talked about it. So when we now drive with this container through the aisle, it's basically, instead of 40 shuttles running into a warehouse and bringing me one box, it's one robot doing the same job, and just collecting the boxes or the load carriers with the products that we need for the pick. So that means we need much less robots, much less space, and that gives us great efficiency advantage. The second idea is that basically we bring this container, when we filled it in the warehouse, to the pick station. And that is great, because at the pick station we have all the products we need for the next orders in one place. So we're really fast at picking. We do that currently manual, right? So we have a person doing the final pick, and we pick there 500 to 600 order lines per hour. So it's really fast. And there is no training needed, because we have a visual guidance for people. There's nothing to read, nothing complicated. We tested it with groups of students. We just told them, here's the app, here's the product, get started. And really fast, without training, they can work on it. And obviously, the robot is also multi-purpose. So the idea is that you can not only use him in the warehouse, but you can obviously use him to replenish goods. You can use him to sort goods, because this system you see here now loaded with products, right? You could also put shipments in. And the third element I already mentioned, we had to build the own software for the system, because our storage just works different and has different needs than a rack-based storage system. So we have an own storage management system, integrates with your ERP or your other logistics systems that you have. And we have a robot management system that obviously manages the machines and the apps that run the processes at the pick station. And the great advantage is basically you get a system that is plug and play. So when you buy the containers and the handling robot, it comes with software. There's maybe some adaptations that you want, but basically it runs. And this means such a system can be installed in a day and doesn't take years to build out or automate a warehouse. Now, I talked about those three dilemmas, right? Either speed, density, or flexibility. The cool thing is you can actually have three, right? At once. Because Pick8ship gives you those three advantages and gives you a lot of flexibility over time. Now, I have a little video for you that just shows our test system that we're currently testing with customers, or we do it in summer last year. You see our lead of robotics basically loading the system. So it's the receive process. You can put individual products or bins or cardboard boxes as you wish. Gives you all the flexibility. Then you see the handling robot. He now drives through an aisle and collects the products for the pick station. And you see he drives to those containers that he needs. He also switches aisles, obviously, as he needs. And then he just collects the individual products and places them in the piggyback container that he has on his machine when he drives to the warehouse. And again, those can be totally different sizes of products, can be mixed shelves, mixed trays, or single product trays. And here, if you're at the pick station, on the left-hand side, you see the container that we collected with the robot. And now you have all products. On the right-hand side, in that case, is food delivery. It's already the delivery container. So it's direct pick and pack and really fast and also convenient picking for the picker. And what you see here is basically the screen the operator would see. And so the system is not chained, but you can basically decide the job you need to do. And then you just tap on, if it's storage, picking, or if you have a sorting job to do. So that's why we call it multi-purpose. So there's a lot of things you can do with the same machine. Even include a pickup, customer pickup for certain applications. Really interesting. Because if you have the automated system, it can do that. Now, what have we learned from testing with customers? So we tested three food cases, actually. We tested fashion, we tested hospital replenishment, so health and care. We tested beauty. So it's quite universal, right? And the numbers you see is basically the average, that we saw from those cases where we ran the test. So compared to a manual system, like 6 to 10 times faster order picking. Obviously, one of the main driver of improvement, because that's the main cost base we have, labor cost. So faster order picking, 2 to 4 times higher density than a normal shelved warehouse. So we get really much more business and much more product into the existing space. On the cost base, we always, for the testing, we always did business cases with customers. In the beginning, very rough ones, and then refined them over time. And we tested them to see if we really match those numbers. And we can say that, anything that's related to food or that has high throughput, we get to cost saving 70% compared to a manual operation. And, if it's, for example, fashion, you have not so many picks, but lots of products to store, there it could be a bit slower. The payback of these systems is around 2 to 3 years. In food, and with 3 shift operations, it goes down to 2, can be below, depending a bit on the final setup you're choosing. But it's really super efficient and fast payback. And it's very flexible in terms of how you scale it. We always say, you set it up in a day instead of years. But also you can change it as fast, because if you need more capacity, you just add containers, a row, for example, or you add a robot. And if you would want to move the system to another site, you just load it on a truck, drive to the new site, and in a day it runs again. So it's extremely flexible and gives you a lot of safety too. And there's no fixed installation that you need to do. Food, you saw the examples, you can grab from the picture, very flexible, high density. And food is an interesting thing also, that you are flexible to switch due dates. So you don't mix due dates in a bin, but you can actually have one row, right, from one due date, and it's maybe only 4 or 8 centimeters high, and you only use that space. If you have 20 or 10 pick stations parallel, you can make sure that you have enough products and load carriers available that you always can pick that product. So there's a lot of exciting stuff that you can do with the system. And I can't go through all details. Fashion similar, there you have often t-shirts. So you have very thin stuff. You don't need to stack that in a bin. You can really take a tray and just put 5 t-shirts on it. And so you're really fast at picking. And in fashion, we have usually density higher than in food, so it goes up to 5 times the amount of products we can store per square meter. And also we pick faster because especially in fashion, if you have a lot of stuff in a bin, to find the right one takes time. You lose time and you make errors. But if you can split things, you're much faster because you see it directly. Similar electronics, so really nice that if you put in iPhones or if you put cables, it's just easy to find things and fast to pick. And by the way, it's also secure if you transport in these containers, besides saving on packaging. So the system is really universal. You can run very different type of products in it. I would say that's comparable to other systems too. But here you're really flexible also to mix things at the same time. So for example, in food, to do fast delivery and scheduled delivery in one system is hard. Here you can easily do it because you just park the containers until the tours are defined and then the robot can sort them again. Now, just as an outlook, how does such a system come into place? It could be an empty warehouse, a new one, right? And then obviously you just build it there. And as I said, this is a matter of days, not years. Also, there's not a lot of planning needed. So, we've done a lot of food cases, for example. If you have one, depending if it's kind of similar, it's fast. If it's a bit new, it takes more time. So it can be really fast. The second thing is you don't have to take the 5, 10, 20 million decision today. You can really start immediately with a small system that you see on the left, the pilot, as we call it. You can start with 2 robots, 60, 80 containers. So that's a compared small investment. But you do quite business in that because there is 1,800 to 2,500 load carriers in such a small system. So you can place, 800 to over 1,000 SKUs in there and really do an operation because a pick station, in 10 hours does 4,000 picks. And what is interesting is, usually if you do a business case, you assume volume and everything in 3 years because that's how long it takes till the system is there. But we've seen how things change. And that's really risky because if you have half the volume, then you have double the fixed cost per item, right? It kills your business case right away. And in such a case, you would just, start small and then add the capacity as you need it. But you can also start saving right away, not only in 3 years or in 2 years. So that gives you not only flexibility, but also a lot of safety in the process. And that's also how we work with customers. Usually it starts with a discussion on the use case. It can be a phone call, Teams meeting, or you want to see the system, then you visit us in Zurich. And it's a discussion on how could it look like. Maybe first numbers, what could the business case look like? If you think that's interesting, typically a rough concept and a business case to basically understand a bit more. How much space do we need? How many containers? We've built our system parallel with simulation, right? So we can always simulate, even emulate a system for you so that you see how your system will perform. You can test, obviously, also. We had all customers so far, they always send 1 or 2 pallets of goods. We put it in our system, and when they came for a workshop, they were basically testing with their own products and seeing with their own products how things work. And that makes a huge difference because it's not theory, it's not video, it's you sensing, being yourself at the pick station and experiencing how it works.